I'm 22, and about a month back I was browsing an online classified site looking to acquire a large armchair for my new place. I stumbled upon an offering that struck me as a genuine bargain. From the accompanying photographs, the chair appeared to be in superb condition. The seller specified contact via email. His address was desertwanderer999webmail.net. I admit that email felt a little unsettling, yet I proceeded to send the fellow my proposed price. He responded within 5 minutes, accepting my offer and requesting my home address. Honestly, his asking made me feel quite uncomfortable. I was hesitant about having a complete stranger come directly to my residence. I put forward the idea that I could simply visit his place to pick it up, but he persistently insisted on coming to my location instead. Eventually, I stopped replying. The next day, he emailed me again, voluntarily providing his address. I was conflicted about whether I should still go, but the price seemed like such an incredible deal, almost suspiciously low. Plus, according to the address provided, he wasn't situated too far away. So I hopped into my vehicle and headed over to the seller's house. Immediately upon arrival, I observed that the dwelling was notably smaller than the other houses on the street. When I pressed the doorbell, a man in his mid-40s wearing a beanie opened the door. He greeted me with a broad smile and invited me inside. A distinct sense of unease began to creep in instantly. He guided me towards his main room, and there I saw the armchair. Straight away, I noticed abrasions and minor rips on the fabric. It was nowhere near the excellent condition depicted in the online listing. I pointed this out, and he simply smiled and offered to reduce the cost. I informed him I was no longer interested, and this is when things took a disturbing turn. As I was making my way out of the house, he placed a hand on my arm and offered to let me have it for free if I was willing to reciprocate in a certain way. I gasped in repulsion and quickly made my way back to my car. I didn't even glance back through the window. I just sped away from the location as fast as I could. But the incident didn't conclude there. Later that same evening, I was relaxing in my room watching a show when I thought I heard heavy steps ascending the stairs to my front porch. I silenced the television and could distinctly hear sounds suggesting someone tampering with the lock on my main door. I leapt from my bed and crept quietly towards the front door to peer through the viewer, but whoever it was had already departed. And then I suspected I heard the sound of the rear yard gate swinging open and shut. That was the moment I grabbed my phone and contacted emergency services. Shortly after, I heard tampering sounds at the back entrance of my apartment unit. I yelled out to the presumed intruders that law enforcement was en route, and subsequently I heard the sound of the gate swing open and shut once more. They had vanished. This occurred approximately a month prior, and no similar events have transpired since then. Yet I still struggle with sleeplessness at night. I am almost completely certain it was the individual offering the armchair. He must have tracked me back to my residence. It couldn't possibly have been a mere coincidence. I have no intention of using that classified site again, and I'm still actively searching for a new place to live. I was seeking a vehicle as a gift for my son's milestone birthday. I browsed common automotive sales platforms and online auctions like Cars.com and eBay Motors. As anticipated, the prices there were generally inflated. A local classified site seemed to be the only venue offering genuine bargains. Approximately a week into my search, I discovered an listing for an older model compact SUV, an 05 Ford Explorer. It listed around 70,000 miles, no reported incidents, no major flaws, and stated good condition for just $3,400. This appeared like a truly incredible price for an SUV of that type with relatively low usage. The seller's residence was located around 12 miles away, a manageable distance for vehicle viewing. I contacted him by phone to arrange a viewing appointment. The individual seemed ordinary during our conversation. He guaranteed there were absolutely no mechanical issues with the SUV. He stated his name was Arthur. I carried $3,400 in currency with me, despite my intention to negotiate the price downwards if possible. I drove up the unpaved lane leading to Arthur's property approximately a quarter of an hour ahead of schedule. It was a surprisingly small dwelling with a relatively spacious plot of land, primarily due to its isolation from surrounding residences. The workshop door was ajar, so I approached to see if anyone was present. Aside from an excessive collection of assorted metal pieces, it was unoccupied. The SUV was not visible anywhere. The only vehicle on the premises was a worn-out pickup truck. I headed to the main entrance to confirm the address digits. It corresponded to the correct location. The doorbell mechanism was absent, so I rapped on the main door. I continued knocking for perhaps 5 minutes before opting to phone the individual. So I dialed his number and detected the sound of a mobile phone vibrating or ringing from within the dwelling. I felt utterly perplexed at this juncture. At this point, I was certain I was at the correct property, and I couldn't comprehend why. If he was present, he wouldn't respond. I resolved that I needed to glance through one of the windows. Looking through the pane, visibility was poor due to the dimness inside the structure. I noticed a decidedly vintage dining ensemble, and opposite that I observed a figure positioned near the rear exit, gazing outwards. I assumed that must have been Arthur. I tapped on the glass, but the figure remained motionless. There was no fence or barrier surrounding the back area, just an expansive, unfenced space. Considering the location wasn't deeply rural, I plainly proceeded around the side of the house towards the rear yard. I could not grasp how my actions weren't noticed. Upon reaching the rear exit, I made a horrifying discovery. The form by the door was a preserved human body. I retreated hastily along the path I'd taken back to my vehicle. I glanced back once more before departing. The window coverings I had looked through were now closed, but I could make out that a couple of the slats were warped, allowing a view. Someone was positioned there, observing my departure. You can likely imagine I accelerated fiercely the entire journey back. The entirety of the experience remains baffling. The scattered vehicle components, the absence of the specific SUV, the ghastly preserved individual. The lack of the advertised vehicle suggests to me that the person present had no intention of completing a sale. This also leads to the unsettling realization that I came perilously close to ending up as another inanimate figure facing out from that man's rear entrance. I sought to purchase a specific electronic item, a Pro Drone 3, perhaps a year prior. I located an individual via a local classified site listing theirs for $190. He asserted it was in immaculate condition and stated they were upgrading to a newer model, a Pro Drone 4. Lacking expertise in thoroughly checking electronics, I brought my younger sibling with me who possessed significantly more technical knowledge. We arranged to meet midway in a coffee shop parking area around 10 p.m. Two burly, imposing figures exited a dark four-door vehicle and approached us. One of the individuals produced the device and displayed it. It appeared completely pristine. My sibling swapped a test component into the device. He performed some checks and confirmed it was functional. The seller then requested $240 despite the initial price being $190. I claimed I only had $190 on me, and he appeared somewhat displeased. I did possess $240, but I wasn't willing to exceed his stated asking price. I suspected this was his method of preventing negotiation downwards. I gave the individual the $190, and he and his associate returned to their vehicle. We re-entered my car, and I tested the new device's functionality by contacting my partner. I spent about 5 minutes checking various features. My sibling noted that the other two had also not yet departed, but I didn't give it much thought. I ignited the engine and exited the parking area. My sibling then observed that the other individuals started their vehicle simultaneously with mine. I didn't find this particularly strange. I proceeded onto the highway and eventually halted at a traffic signal. It was then I spotted the dark sedan stopping directly behind me in my mirror. I found that rather odd, as I was certain they had arrived from the other direction. I resumed my journey home. At every turn we took, they mirrored our movement, keeping a very close distance behind me. My sibling proposed stopping the car, but there was absolutely no chance I would do that. I was convinced those individuals intended harm. It reached the point where I was actively trying to evade them and began driving in a hazardous manner. If they genuinely needed something, they would have called or at least used their horn. They were clearly seeking confrontation or malicious intent. I attempted a dangerous maneuver to shake them off. At a junction, the signal had just switched to red. I accelerated rapidly across the junction before the perpendicular traffic could proceed. My sibling yelled at me, calling me reckless and insane, but it was effective. They did not pursue us through the junction. We arrived home following the unusually tense drive. My pulse was still elevated from the stress of the encounter. I was just relieved to have acquired a functional device for a reasonable price. Later that evening, I was experimenting with the device, attempting to configure settings before retiring for the night. My father, mother, and sibling had already gone to sleep by this time. And then the sharp sound of 2 vehicle doors closing nearby interrupted my task. I looked through my window and felt my heart seize up entirely. The dark sedan was parked directly opposite our house. I could only presume the 2 individuals were already making their way to our main entrance. I instantly roused my father and relayed the situation with urgency. He rose, seized a piece of sports equipment, and positioned himself behind the main door. A forceful pounding commenced at the main door. My father shouted at them to leave immediately. One of the figures on the opposite side of the entrance claimed to be armed and threatened to blast the lock if we didn't comply. My father instructed me to contact Mark, our friend residing a couple of houses away who works in law enforcement. I phoned Mark, who stated he would be there promptly and advised us to remain out of sight. This is the segment of the experience that continues to unnerve me even now. There was the muffled report of a handgun. I peered over and saw a projectile puncture in the door, mere inches from where my father had been. My father retreated swiftly from the door, and we all fell silent, listening. We heard Mark outside commanding them loudly to discard their firearms. My father went out to assist once they complied. Mark apprehended the two assailants. I must state, this was the most terrifying day of my existence, but it was also, conversely, the most profound sense of relief I'd ever known.